gonna sing this song to let you know that you're not alone. And if you're like me, you need hope, coffee and melody. So sit back down and let the world keep spinning round. For yesterday's gone and today's waiting on you to show your face. And it might not be the prettiest thing that you'll ever see, but it's a new day. Oh baby, it's a new day. And it might not look like a beautiful sunrise, but it's a new day. Oh baby, it's a new day. I'm a pilgrim soul. I've traveled far and come back home. And this land is hard and cold for those who long to love. And I know it might seem that the world is crumbling, but it's me and you dancing in the kitchen at 2 a.m. and we're still alive. And it might not be the prettiest thing that you'll ever see, but it's a new day. Oh baby, it's a new day. And it might not look like a beautiful sunrise, but it's a new day. Oh baby, it's a new day. It's the calm of the storm that comes flowing in. It's the springtime saying I'm back again. The clouds they roll by, crossing moonlight. Me and you love, everything's alright. Standing in the rain with nowhere to go, laughing and we're spinning, and I hope that you remember this day for the rest of your life. Me and you love, everything is gonna be alright. And it just might be the prettiest thing that you'll ever see. Well, it's a new day. Oh, baby, it's a new day. If you look outside to see a beautiful sunrise, well, it's a new day. Oh, a new day. It's a new day. Oh, and it just might be the prettiest thing that you'll ever see. Well, it's a new day. Oh, baby, it's a new day. If you look outside to see a beautiful sunrise, oh, it's a new day. It's a new day. It's a new day. It's the calm of the storm that comes blowing in. It's springtime saying I'm back again. The clouds are roll by, crossing moonlight. Me and you love, everything's alright. Standing in the rain with nowhere to go, laughing and we're singing, and I hope that you remember this day for the rest of your life. Me and you love, everything is gonna be alright. I'm gonna sing this song to let you know that you're not alone. And if you're like me, you need hope, coffee and melody.
Good morning and welcome to First Parish in Brookline. Welcome back, whether you've been coming for decades or you've just joined us, and a very warm welcome to those who are here for the first time. We're so glad you're here with us today, and it's so good to see everyone this morning. I'm Nancy Clark, and I'm one of the worship associates here at First Parish. Our senior minister is Reverend Lisa Perry Wood, and this morning our guest minister is Reverend Jolie Olivetti. Reverend Jolie was recently ordained in Watertown, where she was ministerial intern, and she has also served as youth ministry coordinator in Sherborne. She is currently a chaplain resident at Brigham and Women's Hospital and is the affiliate community minister at Theodore Parker Church in West Roxbury. First Parish is a welcoming Unitarian Universalist congregation, open and affirming of all people. Whoever you are, whatever your gifts or abilities, however you identify your gender or sexual orientation, wherever your life and faith journey has taken you, you are welcome here. If this is your first time visiting us, or if you've not done so before, please take a moment to fill out one of the yellow visitor cards you'll find in the envelopes on the backs of the pews, and place your visitor card in the offering plate as it comes around. And after the service, everyone is warmly invited to join us for conversation and refreshments through this door to Lion Chapel. And we encourage both newcomers and long-timers to pick up one of our striped mugs at coffee hour to signal interest in sharing conversation with others that you may not know or may not know well. Welcome to one and all. Sorry.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here this morning. It's really an honor to be able to lead worship with you all. So our call to worship this morning is by Oglala Lakota holy man, Black Elk. Everything the power of the world does is done in a circle. The sky is round, and I have heard that the earth is round like a ball, and so are all the stars. The wind in its greatest power whirls. Birds make their nests in circles, for theirs is the same religion as ours. The sun comes forth and goes down again in a circle. The moon does the same, and both are round. Even the seasons form a great circle in their changing, and always come back again to where they were. The life of a person is a circle from childhood to childhood, and so it is in everything where power moves. Come, my friends, come into this beloved and sacred place, and let us worship together. And now, please rise as you are willing and able, and join in singing our opening hymn, which is in your teal hymnals, number 1000, Morning Has Come.
At this time, I would like to invite Dean Cody and Catherine Kirshner forward to light the chalice, symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith the world over. As they light the chalice, please join me in our unison affirmation printed in your order of service. in English and then in Spanish. We give ourselves one unto another, covenanting to walk together as a congregation, promising faithfully to watch over one another and to delight for love to abide in our midst. Nos entregamos y nos comprometemos a caminar juntos como congregación, prometiendo con mucha fe cuidarnos mutuamente y deleitarnos en amor que permanecerá entre nosotros. Each week we also light 2 candles of peace, each candle representing a different place on earth that we want to lift up and remember this morning as a sacred encounter with the world. There are untold numbers of places on earth that need peace. Today we remember 2 places that we especially hold close in this service and throughout the week ahead. After each of the candles is lit, we will speak the words for peace in English, Arabic, and Hebrew. Peace, salam, shalom. Our first candle is lit for the people of the Democratic Republic of Congo, where ongoing violence and political turmoil are now further complicated by an outbreak of the Ebola virus. Peace, salam, shalom. Our second candle is lit for the Arctic region, where the ice cap is melting even faster than initially thought. Indigenous people and animals are under pressure to find food and habitat as sea levels rise, and vulnerable coastal populations throughout the world are threatened. Peace, salam, shalom.
Joys and Concerns is a time in our service when you, the members and friends of this congregation, are invited to come forward and share whether there is something of particular joy or something of difficulty in your life. So at this time, I would like to invite you to come up and share with the congregation what you're holding in your heart this morning. So for all that was shared and all that remains unspoken on our hearts, let's light a final candle. And let's say together, there is a love holding me, there is a love holding you, we rest in that love. Oops, sorry. I tried. And I'd like to invite you to join hearts with me in prayer. On this, the next to last day of 2018, we pause and think back on the year that has just passed. We grieve and lament the pain in this troubled world. Our hearts ache, broken and then broken again, after each injustice, after each personal hurt. Our hearts are tender but tough. Our wounds heal, and our hearts do not beat alone, for we are surrounded by love within us and beside us. Let us say silently to ourselves or softly out loud something we are ready to mourn and let go of, something we will leave behind in 2018. And let us give thanks for the blessings we have received this year, for our hearts also swell, full of love and hope, the gifts of family, of friends, the smell of the woods, the love of a pet. And so let us say silently to ourselves or softly out loud something we have loved, something we are grateful for. And please join me in a moment of silence.
The offering will now be gratefully received. If you are visiting First Parish for the first time today,
We're going to do the offering in a little bit.
sorry. Oh, never mind.
I think that's me next. No. Oh, my heavens. Oh, yes, let's hear a song.
Thought I knew my mind like the back of my hand. The gold and the rainbow, but nothing panned out as I planned. They say only milk and honey's gonna make your soul satisfied. Well, I better learn how to swim, 'cause the crossing is chilly and wide. Twisted guardrails on the highway, broken glass on the cement. Ghost of someone's tragedy, how recklessly my time has been spent. They say that it's never too late, but you don't get any younger. Well, I better learn how to starve the emptiness and feed the hunger. Up on the watershed, standing in the fork in the road, you can stand there and agonize till your agony's your heaviest load. You never fly as the crow flies, get used to a country mile. When you're learning to face path at your pace, every choice is worth your while. And there's always room looking back to light a clearer path. Every 5 years or so I look back on my life, and I had a good life. Start at the start, full circle round, catch a breeze, take a spin. But ending up where I started again makes me wanna stand still. Up on the watershed, standing at the fork in the road, you can stand there and agonize till your agony's your heaviest load. Never fly as the crow flies, get used to a country mile. When you're learning to face path at your pace, every choice is worth your while. Stepping on a crack, breaking up and looking back till every tree limb overhead just seems to sit and wait, till every step you take becomes a twist of fate. Up on the watershed, standing at the fork in the road, you can stand there and agonize till your agony's your heaviest load. You never fly as the crow flies, get used to a country mile. When you're learning to face path at your pace, every choice is worth your while. Up on the watershed, standing at the fork in the road, you can stand there and agonize till your agony's your heaviest load. You never fly as the crow flies, get used to a country mile. when you're learning to face the path at your pace. Every choice is worth your while.
We have a responsive reading this morning, number 544 in your gray hymnal. This is a poem by Kathleen McTeague called New Year's Day. The 1st of January is another day dawning, the sun rising as the sun always rises, the earth moving in its rhythms. So it is. Everything is the same, bound into its history as we ourselves are bound. What shall we do with this great gift of time this year? We are the hearts and minds, the hands and feet, the embodiment of all the best visions of our people. Let us take the step forward together onto new ground, planting our dreams well, faithfully, and in joy.
Sorry about that. The offering will now be gratefully received.
Before we sing this next song, I'd like to thank and acknowledge both Kristen McIntyre and Elizabeth McIntyre for stepping in this morning kind of last minute. I don't have much voice after the holidays. Seem to have come down with something, and they very last minute stepped in when it was very clear I couldn't be singing much. So, thank you both. From the day we arrive on the planet and blinking step into the sun, there's more to be seen that can never be seen, more to do that can ever be done. Some say eat or be eaten. Some say live and let live. But all are agreed as they join the stampede. You should never take more than you give. The circle of life, it's the wheel of fortune. It's the leap of faith. It's the hand of hope. Till we find our place. the circle of life. Some of us fall by the wayside, and some of us soar to the stars, and some of us sail through our troubles, and some have to live with a scar. There's far too much to take in here, more to find that can never be found. But the sun rolling high through the sapphire sky keeps the great small to the endless round. The circle of life, it's the wheel of fortune, it's the leap of faith, it's the hand of hope, till we find our place on the path unwinding. In the circle of life, it's the wheel of fortune, it's the leap of faith, and the band of hope, till we find our place on the path unwinding. In the circle of life. On the path unwinding, in the circle of life.
Hello, I'm Krista Tippett, and this is On Being, NPR. Today, we are exploring beauty with Nobel physicist Frank Wilczek. So symmetry is an important notion in the perception of beauty for the human brain. I want to tease out, I believe, and I want to make sure I get this right, that you're saying that Einstein's, what you call his new style in physics, helped bring symmetry home, in a sense, or helped us understand the importance of symmetry, or symmetry as an aspect of reality. How would you say that?
Well, as Dr. Frank Wilczek would say, symmetry, as used in common language, is kind of a vague word. It means balance, harmony, goodness. Somehow it has nice connotations.
Yeah, I like the way you said it's also fairness.
But it's also vague.
We even look for ethical symmetry.
Fairness, yes, proportion. But in science, we need to have a more precise concept. And the concept that we use that's more precise, that has something in common with the common usage, but is a special case of it and gets amplified in different directions, is that symmetry in physics and mathematics that means change without change. Now that seems kind of mysterious and mystical, but it means something very concrete. Einstein's theory of relativity, you guys didn't know you were going to learn about this morning, it says that if you ride by the world at a constant velocity, any constant velocity, although things will look different as you're riding by the world, some things will be coming at you, other things will be moving away, faster, slower, the same physical laws will apply to this new configuration of the world. So you can make a change in the way everything looks, but you don't change the laws. A simpler example might be helpful here. We're used to the idea that a circle is a very symmetrical object. What does that have to do with change without change? Well, a circle is an object that you can rotate around its center by any angle. And although it may have changed, and every point, in fact, moves, the circle as a whole does not move. And that's what makes it symmetric. If you take a more lopsided shape and you rotate it, there's no way. It won't come back to itself until you go all the way around. So if you take an equilateral triangle, it'll come around after you turn it 1/3 of the way. So it has some symmetry, but much less than a circle. So that's a concept. Change without change. Things that might have changed but don't. That picks out special kinds of objects, like circles. Physics lesson for the morning. Please rise as you are willing and able and join in singing hymn number 1011 in your teal hymnals, Return Again. So my dad once told me that he read in the Globe that there was a gentleman who traveled from Vermont to Boston to take a particular photograph that he would add to his portfolio of evidence that the Earth is flat. Apparently his girlfriend dumped him. She just couldn't take it anymore. I commend him for his determination, and I commend her for her discernment. I, on the other hand, am not collecting evidence that the Earth is round. People took care of that for all of us many centuries ago. I am also certain that the Earth hasn't tilted on its axis. So I paid close attention when the podcast I was listening to mentioned a place called Igloolik in the Arctic Circle, where they've been seeing the sun come up in a different place than it used to. Like so much so that it made people wonder if the Earth had shifted somehow. The particular sunrise when the Inuit of this region noticed this change was after the long polar night. So this is the first glimpse that they're getting of the sun in months. This is something that people take special note of. There are big parties to welcome back the sun, and they know just where and when to look for the little glimmer that appears ever so briefly on the horizon. So sure enough, when the reporter who was doing this podcast story went to go celebrate and eat caribou with the people of Igloolik, the sun peaked earlier than it was supposed to, and in a weird spot. Don't worry. The new sunrise wasn't because our planet twitched massively. It's because of this atmospheric phenomenon that happens sometimes in the polar regions, when there is a very cold layer of air on the surface with a layer of warm air above, and the boundary between the two layers acts like sort of a mirror. So whatever's just over the horizon reflects onto that mirror, just over the curve of the Earth. So what they're seeing is a reflection of the sun, not the sun itself. It's a sneak preview of the end of the long polar night, which I suppose is reason enough to eat caribou. The sun will be here soon. However dark it may feel around here lately, we don't go for months without sunlight like the people of the Arctic. All the same, if you're like me, you may feel ready for more sun, for the days to get longer. We know it's coming. We've gone through this before. This time of year is stuffed with familiar rituals and turning points in the calendar, ways for us to recognize that indeed, soon we will have more sunlight. And New Year's marks the fact that we've swung in a giant loop around the sun yet again. Sometimes I wonder, does the Earth get tired of carving the same path in space year after year, the way we can get tired of the same old routine? Each year, New Year's Eve offers us the ideal conditions for disappointment. We are supposed to have a show-stopping party. We have to have someone to smooch at midnight. I mean, come on. It's hard enough to even stay awake until midnight. We're supposed to make resolutions that will fix our lives. We're supposed to start fresh, somehow get everything right that we've always gotten wrong. It can be discouraging to make the same New Year's resolutions year after year, to feel like our lives are going in circles. But maybe we can glean some wisdom from the turning of the year, the invitation to celebrate the return of longer days, the invitation to begin again, all over again. Our same old problems might still be here when the long nights are over, but the New Year's sun might shine new light on them. Sometimes the light that shines to help us see our problems in a new way is not the light of the sun, but rather the metaphorical light of another perspective, the light of community, when we see our situation reflected through other people's eyes. I have been learning about a practice for talking and listening to one another called circles. This practice originated among the Tlingit people of the Yukon Territory, which is quite a ways west from Igloolik. Everyone in a talking circle, you may know, is invited to speak one at a time. Sometimes we pass an object around to mark whose turn it is, a stone, a stick, a shell. We have a host whose job it is to convene this gathering and to make it welcoming, to begin the conversation. The talk moves in one direction around the circle. When you get the talking piece, you may speak or you may pass it along without speaking. So that's all very well and good. But what if I'm desperate to respond to something that someone else said immediately, but it's not my turn? The structure of the circle begs me to wait and listen instead of jumping in to offer my brilliance or my defense or whatever it is. It's hard to get used to. It pushes me to let go of the need to perfectly represent myself at all times. I have to sit with the discomfort or the eagerness to speak. I learned to trust that even if I don't ever get to say that particular thing that I had in mind, express my agreement, tell that anecdote, I'm still part of this circle. I'm still part of the collective story that we're telling together. And enough rounds around the circle, I learned to stop rehearsing what I'm going to say before it's my turn, once I finally get the talking piece. The more we circle around, the more I get out of my own head, and the more I can hear my story reflected in others' stories. And so the more I can be changed by the wisdom of the circle. I used to lead circles like this at a domestic violence shelter called Renewal House. You may have heard of Renewal House. It's part of our UU urban ministry in Roxbury. Trauma, like domestic violence, can interrupt people's capacity to trust one another, and it's incredibly isolating. Gathering for a talking circle, as they do in the shelter, they still do it, can ease that isolation. I would offer conversation prompts about family, goals, change, or something more lighthearted, like what kind of superpower would you choose? After some initial reluctance to share with one another, we would soon be laughing, nodding, crying together, weaving a collective story. Circles disrupt the illusion that we are in this alone. They teach us we have much to learn from one another, and so we move from separate to together. We connect as our shared story builds around the circle. When we're not sitting in circles together, it is very easy to be caught up in the mindset that we are supposed to live linear lives, marching forward, ever productive, always improving. The seeming impossibility of New Year's resolutions would suggest that it doesn't always work that way. We do not always feel like we are getting somewhere. The cycles of nature are a powerful antidote to this pressure to progress. I used to work as a farmer, and I relied heavily on those cycles for my own peace of mind. When a crop failed, all was not lost, because I knew all that vegetation would eventually nourish the soil as compost. Feeling overwhelmed by the high summer's frenzy, up to my elbows in tomatoes and aphids, at least I knew it would calm down in a few months. The crops would offer their last fruits, frost would come, and the fields would be quiet until the next time around. We made a few changes here and there from year to year, but basically we did the same thing every year, using the same kinds of practices that have been used for generations, for millennia, on small organic farms like ours, trying to get to know our land and keeping up with the rhythms of the season. Rather than tired of repetition, we were glad for it, because the patterns helped us learn. It was change without change, like the physicist's description of symmetry in our reading this morning. And that's how the growing season goes. The crops and the people who tend them move in a great big circle from year to year, changing without changing. These days, it can feel a bit like the earth is off its axis. The people of Igloolik are right to wonder if something has shifted, because it has. In the last 50 years, they've been forced from their semi-nomadic way of life into permanent settlements and the cash economy. Levels of food insecurity, not knowing where your next meal might come from, in Nunavut territory where Igloolik is located, levels of food security there are unbelievably high because of this change in their way of life, as well as the absurd prices of food in this region with no roads, and the impacts of hunting ground access issues, and of course, climate change. All of these impacts on their wild food sources like caribou. There's a woman from Igloolik named Lisi Papatsi who founded a group called Feeding My Family, which is organizing to raise awareness about these issues and to foster unity across the North, to work together, to adapt to these changes, to feed one another. there is a strong culture of sharing in these communities, and food security initiatives are building on this existing culture. And this is how any of us will make it through these world-tilting crises we are facing. We will make it together. This is another kind of circle that helps us through this life, circles of community. From the Arctic Circle to Renewal House to the farm, we find circles and the truths they offer us. The patterns of our lives come and go in cycles, and we are all in this together. As Black Elk said, everything the power of the world does is done in a circle. We turn and return to ourselves like the cycling seasons, the phases of the moon. And of course, as we know, our lives move not in simple circles. Things change without changing, but they change. A birth, a death, growth, loss, a new perspective. Our lives are marked by the interplay of the familiar and the new. And so, as we get ready to begin our journey around the sun yet again, woven through with this mix of old and new, let us pay attention to the cycles and the circles that are all around us, to the earth, the sun, the cycles of nature, and let us pay attention to one another and support one another so that none of us has to swing around the sun alone. Amen, and may it be so. Please rise in body or in spirit and join in singing hymn number 163, For the Earth Forever Turning.
1, 2, 3, 1.
Please join me in our unison affirmation as Reverend Jolie extinguishes the chalice. We extinguish the flame and not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry with us and offer as gifts unto the world. And please take the hand or touch the elbow or shoulder of someone near you for the benediction.
This new year, may we all find some peace and wisdom in the circles where the power of the world is moving. Our service ends, but our ministry begins. Let us go forth from this place full of the blessings of this sacred circle of community. Go in peace.